Hey everybody, Kathy Flett here with an updated video for you. A lot of people have been asking about getting a video from me of the presentations that I've been doing, and I want to get it out to you. It's coming your way now. You asked for it, I'm going to hand it out. The thing of it is, I had to switch it up a little bit, okay? So what you've seen me present in person, it's going to be almost the same here, with the exception of the last two slides. Because now that we have this petition on the go, there's some different rules that we need to follow for Elections Alberta. And those of us who like to talk about this subject have to be a little bit careful that we don't break those rules. So I will share all the same information with you, except for maybe my opinion or what I think you should do on the topic, even though everybody knows. But regardless, we're going to color in the lines so we can do this properly, do it right, make sure that we don't get anybody or ourselves into trouble, and still get the information out to the people that are looking for it. As I was traveling the province, I also got to find out what it is you guys want to know. What questions do you have? What information are you looking for? And so there's been a couple of changes just to kind of encompass that as well, those conversations. A lot of people, I also learned, think that this movement just started, that it's kind of new, and it actually isn't. It's been around a long, long time. And I had someone share a letter with me that a friend of theirs had received from the premier. It was a reply to a letter that had been sent to the premier, and the premier got back to them. And I was so excited about this when I saw it that they let me keep a copy of it. They gave me a copy of it so that I could share it with you. And here's what it says. Thank you very much for your email. I appreciate you taking the time to share your views with me. Many Albertans have expressed frustration in recent years at their lack of representation in Ottawa on many different issues. However, most Albertans are also committed Canadians and do not support separation. They want to be positive contributors to Canada and want to be respected on the national stage. The Alberta government supports that view and is working on a number of fronts to improve Alberta's representation in Ottawa in positive, meaningful ways. I've been clear on many occasions with federal officials, including the Prime Minister, that the federal government needs to do a better job of listening and responding to the concerns of Albertans. I have taken the liberty of sharing a copy of your comments with the Honorable blah, 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 Minister of this, that, and the other for his information as well. Many thanks again for writing. Sincerely yours, Ralph Klein. This was in October of 2004. There's nothing new under the sun. And did you catch the verbiage in this letter? Most Albertans are also committed Canadians and do not support such separation. They want to be positive contributors to Canada. I'm going to show you that we already are and be respected on the national stage. The past couple of prime ministers we've had have caused us to be an embarrassment on the national stage. But I just thought that this was pretty interesting. This was from Ralph Klein in 2004, talking about Alberta separation and what we should do about it. Where do we sit? What's going on? And here we are. Nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. So let's dig in to how we got to where we are today. And to figure that out, we need to take a look at the past in order to see the future. Our problems go way back. The people of the Northwest are allowed but a degree more control of their affairs than the serfs of Siberia. That's a pretty thick statement. And it was stated by Frank Oliver, publisher of Edmonton's first newspaper, in August of 1885. So you know downtown Edmonton that's called Oliver, named after this guy. This was before we weren't even a province. And they were already grumblings between the folks that lived here in Ottawa. We desire, every patriotic Canadian desires that the great trade of the prairie shall go to enrich our own people in the East, to build up the factories and the workshops of Eastern Canada, and to contribute in every way to its prosperity. Minister of the Interior Sir Clifford Sifton said that in 1904, the year prior to us becoming a province, and I would suggest to you that this is where Elbows Up began. You see, at that time, we were being advertised as the last best West. We were a district of the province of the Northwest Territories. There was us and the district of Assiniboia and Saskatchewan and Athabasca and Mackenzie. We all made up this big chunk of land that was the province, that was a district in the province of the Northwest Territories. And we were being advertised as the last best West. People were coming from everywhere. It was really our first big boom, and mostly coming from the US. Probably about 60-65% of the people were coming from the US and some from Europe, of course, to make up the difference. And what was being advertised at that time was that we were the land of milk and honey. Bring the family, pack up the kids. It's going to be great. It was a cattle drive from the south. You are going to give you a chunk of land. You've got 3 years to do something with it. And if you do, it's all yours for free. And people came. Oh my gosh, they came. But it didn't take very long for those folks to realize that they didn't have any autonomy over here, which makes it really hard to make decisions when you don't have any local representation either. And so they sat down and they conversed with one another and threw a bunch of ideas down on the table. And then one of those ideas rose to the top. Let's create the province of Buffalo. Take what we know today as Alberta and Saskatchewan and create the province of Buffalo. Well, our premier at the time, his name was Haultain. He was actually a really great guy, real statesman. It's unfortunate there aren't more like him today. And of course, he thought this was a fantastic idea because look at all that ground that he's got to cover. So now he can hand that over and let somebody else cover all of that ground. So he took this idea to Ottawa, where, of course, all great ideas go to die. And they said, no, absolutely not. Do you not see how many people are moving there right now? If that population in the West gets bigger than our population in the East, we're in trouble. That balance of power is going to shift. And I'm going to show you what I mean by that here in a minute. So they took an eraser, a ruler, and a pencil. They redrew the lines and created the provinces of Alberta and Saskatchewan. And then the Dominion of Canada looked like this. So you can see where Ontario and Quebec are. Of course, those were the first two provinces, the French and the English. They had their squabbles, and they finally figured it out and got together. When you look at their landmass, and then you look at what could have been the landmass of the province of Buffalo, with Alberta and Saskatchewan being one province, you can understand why they were a little bit nervous and said, oh, no, 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 no. But this is what it looked like, and this is how it started. But it didn't finish here. Nova Scotia and New Brunswick. Ottawa went and approached them about becoming a part of Canada. Would you like to be part of our confederation? And Nova Scotia and New Brunswick said, well, I don't know. What have you got to offer? And so they sat down at the negotiating table and they scribbled out some things and signed on the bottom line. And those two little provinces joined confederation. Little postage stamp of Manitoba. Same thing. What are you going to offer us? Well, I don't know. You tell me what you want. So they sat down at the table, scribbled out some ideas, and signed on the bottom line. British Columbia. Remember the US, they were still coming up that west coast because they wanted to connect with Alaska. They had this state that was kind of out there all by itself. And when Ottawa saw what was going on, they said, oh, no, you don't. We're taking that chunk of land. So they went over, promised the people of British Columbia, we're going to build a railroad from east to west, west to east, and make sure that you are connected with the rest of this country. Would you like to join us? And the people that lived there at the time said, you know what? Sure, why not? Sounds like a great idea. Newfoundland and Labrador, these guys were the last ones to negotiate. They were holdouts. 1950, so not even that long ago, that they negotiated their way into Confederation. Alberta and Saskatchewan were literally colonized. No negotiation, no table to sit at, no signing on the dotted line. Here's how it's going to be. And we were appointed our first premier. We didn't even get to elect a person. We were appointed a person who was a Liberal. And that is how we became a province. So when somebody says, well, you guys negotiated this is what you asked for. No, we didn't. So what does our country look like today? Specifically from a political standpoint, from a government standpoint. Well, it looks like this. We've got Parliament in Ottawa, and within Parliament, there are two houses, right? There's the upper house and the lower house, or the upper chamber and the lower chamber. The upper are the Senate seats. This is what we see here. Now, all of these are locked in. They don't change. It doesn't matter whether your population goes up, doesn't matter if your population goes down. These seats always stay the same. It's also worth noting that although Alberta tries to elect our senators, we do elect them, Ottawa takes that as a mere suggestion that they never actually act upon. Well, I think Harper did, but that was it. I don't know if anybody else did. It's just a suggestion. They're all appointed positions by the Prime Minister. You get to keep that job until you're 75 or dead. It's a pretty good gig if you can get it, or if you do something really, really bad and they kind of make you resign. But otherwise, you are appointed by the Prime Minister and you get to stay there for a very long time and make a whopping amount of money off of the taxpayers. Now, this is supposed to be the sober second thought, right? So whatever goes through Parliament has to go through the House of Commons, and it has to go through the Senate. Senate has to pass all the bills as well. When we think about that, and you look at how these seats are numbered, like how many each province has across the country, what do you notice? It's a little heavy on one side, isn't it? And it's not our side. Yeah. Not quite equal. Not quite equal. Not only is it not elected, it isn't equal. So let's see a couple of examples of who has been appointed our senator. This is what she thinks of us, her fellow Albertans, who have a different opinion than her about Alberta's place in Confederation. Not only did we not vote her in, we can't vote her out. We can't replace her. But she's voting on our behalf in Parliament. This is another one. Chris Wells, Senator Chris Wells, who was appointed on our behalf, whose values don't align with ours. Apparently, he's all about censoring the internet to make sure we can't share things that they think we shouldn't share. That's not us. We didn't vote for these two, and we can't vote them out. Not surprisingly, Liberal appointees. So let's look at the other chamber that is in Parliament, the House of Commons, right? So these are our MPs. These are the ones we do vote in. Now, when you look at the number of MPs, that's the little black number on the bottom. So we see 43, 37, 14, 14, 122, 78, 74, 10, and 11. What do you notice about those numbers going from west to east? Again, a little heavy on one side, is it not? But this is then when we're told, well, it's supposed to be representation by population. Okay, let's see. In the Senate, When you look at Prince Edward Island, it's just under 45,000 people per senator. Newfoundland, just under 91,000 people per senator. Quebec, 377,000 people per senator. Manitoba, 229,000 people per senator. Alberta, almost 815,000 people per senator. It might even be that now. I don't know. People are coming going around here all the time. But maybe it's better with our MPs, with our members of parliament. We vote these guys in. So let's see. Prince Edward Island has the exact same number. I'm going to tell you why in a minute. Newfoundland, 78,000 almost per MP. Quebec, 116,000 per MP. Manitoba, almost 107,000 per MP. Alberta, 132,000 per MP. This is not representation by population. So when people come at us with this argument, we need to correct them. We need to correct them. So let's dig into these numbers a little bit more. How come on the East they're so close together? The number of senators and the number of MPs. Well, that's because of a senatorial clause. A senatorial clause that states you can never have fewer MPs than you do senators. And remember, these senators, they're locked in. Those numbers don't change. So that means that we could never have fewer than 6 MPs. Prince Edward Island can never have fewer than 4 because they have 4 senators. Newfoundland can never have fewer than 6, so they have 7, right? So on and so forth. Well, then to take this at face value, on Prince Edward Island, you could have 8 Canadian adults, all eligible to vote, all citizens, and 4 of them could be MPs and 4 of them could be senators. And there's nothing that we can do to change that. There's nothing that we can do to change that. As also we look at these numbers, particularly I want you to look at the MP numbers, the 122, 78, 7, 4, 10, and 11, those ones, and then on the West, how many we have. And we notice that it's heavy on one side of the country as opposed to the other. The East has more than the West. How many of you know what time the last federal election was called? When did they call the winner? It was at 8:06. Our polls close at 8. They hadn't even opened our ballot boxes yet to determine the winner. Our votes don't count. And if you did vote for the winner, if you did vote for the Liberal Party, they didn't even need your vote to make it happen. So your vote still didn't count. Something else to consider. There's rumblings of yet another stupid spring election. And people are already going, oh, well, the Conservatives will get in this time. If only the Conservatives get in, then it'll be better. Okay, we talked about the Senate. And we talked about the Senate being stacked now with Liberal appointees, like all but a handful of Liberal appointees. Anything, any law, any bill that gets passed has to go through both our MPs voting on them and the Senate. With the Senate being filled with Liberal appointees, even though they're supposed to be independents, they're not. Do you really think a Conservative government in Ottawa is going to be able to get anything done? They won't. And there's nothing that we can do to change that. It literally doesn't matter right now. It doesn't matter who's in government. The decisions will never, ever, ever favor the West. Our grievances from the way that government is structured, just in recent memory, I'm not even going to go back very far. Just in recent memory, the grievances that we've had. In the 1970s, the Independence Alberta Association was created. So again, This is not new. In fact, it was talked about even before the 70s. Many people in Alberta will remember Trudeau Sr.'s National Energy Program. It decimated us, destroyed Albertans completely. It was awful. And even those of us who were little at the time, we didn't know exactly what was going on, but we knew something was wrong. We knew something was terribly wrong. Then Mulrooney came in, and he was going to be the hero to fix it, but he surely took his sweet time once he realized how nice that money was coming his way. If you can't nationalize it, regulate it. And that's what they did with the Canadian Wheat Board way back in 1935. They regulated it. Now, Harper come in, and in 2015 he privatized it, but it didn't actually make it that much better for our farmers. Speaking of which, dairy, egg, and poultry supply management is a very big deal in this country. They call it supply management, call it a cartel, because that's what it is. Until the East's quotas are filled, the West cannot do anything. That is how it is structured. Very simplistically, but that's how it's structured. And our farmers and our ranchers, there's no free market. They're not allowed to sell anything at all without government approval. It's stupid. We're constantly told we're landlocked. Oh, you can't leave, you're landlocked. What are you going to do? You don't have access to tidewater. I'm aware. You know why we're landlocked? Because our own federal government landlocked us by passing a bunch of laws and policies that not only prevents us from being able to build a pipeline, it prevents any company from wanting to be able to do business with us. There's folks that are freaking out that, oh, if Alberta becomes independent, you're going to chase away all the investment. What investment? There's not a lot of investment taking place with regards to pipelines because they can't. So many projects have been canceled. Billions and billions and billions of dollars have left this province because of Ottawa. They're the ones that landlocked us. EI rule changes. First of all, let's call it unemployment insurance, not employment insurance. Go back to what it is, unemployment insurance. Anyways, there were some changes made quite a while ago to favor the East over the West. That's right. Our country cousins over in the East don't have to work nearly the number of hours that we do to receive the benefits. And again, ignore democratically elected senators. Numerous politically induced recessions. If you take a look back at all the recessions that this province has experienced over the years, I think you will agree that almost all of them were politically induced. They had nothing to do with any economic anything that was going on. It was all Ottawa. And for a stint, it was Ottawa and the provincial government. Thank you, Notley. They also like to keep our dollar low to keep manufacturing exports cheap in the East. Doesn't help us with getting our product out here in the West. And the recent tariff wars pitted the East against the West, not just from the US, by the way. China also pitted East against West. Speaking of East against West, I didn't even know equalization payments were a thing until about 7 years ago. And when I found out, I was not happy about it, and nor should anybody who lives here be. This is what it looks like for this year, the payments that are going to be made. So what an equalization payment is, for those who don't know, we send a whole bunch of money to Ottawa in taxes, and then they take that money and decide how. They've got this formula that they follow, and the formula spits out the other side how much money each province should get back. And the idea behind that is so that have not provinces don't ever have to go without health care or different social programs, things like that. Whereas have provinces get to pay for it because we've got extra money. As you can see, again, the map is a little lopsided. Now, it's not that we really have a problem with sharing our resources, including our money. what many of us have a problem with is that when we, as Albertans, our province posts a recession, when we are in a recession, when we're in a big, big deficit, and there's no more extra money to be found, we still have to pay into equalization. We still have to support all those other provinces. However, when Quebec posts a surplus, the way that that equalization formula is structured, they still receive equalization money, even though they posted a surplus. And that's because Stephen Harper included 50% of our resource revenues in that formula, but told Quebec they could be exempt. And that was because they knew they were going to need votes in the East if they were going to win, because our votes don't count. We talked about that already. Now, our money is going to the same provinces who are telling us that we need to take one for Team Canada. How selfish, you traitors. You want to leave? These are the same provinces who tell us that our oil is dirty, that it's no good, keep it in the ground, socially unacceptable. Same provinces who completely agree that there's no business case for selling Alberta oil and gas to other countries, but yet they'll take our money. Not only will they stifle business around here and take our money off of the business that does take place, these same provinces buy our product from other countries. That's Team Canada right there. And they wonder why we're mad. This cartoon came out in 1915. Here's an updated version. As you can see, nothing has changed. The cost of underselling our oil and gas, they like to say Canadian oil and gas now for some reason. It was dirty Alberta oil not very long ago, so it's ours. It belongs to the province. It's in our ground. Anyways, the cost of underselling oil and gas to the US. So there's a differential, right? That Ottawa negotiated with the US. Well, here's what that differential tends to cost us. $70 million a day, over $2 billion a month, and $25.6 billion per year in lost revenue because of a deal that Ottawa signed on our behalf. People are worried that we would not be able to afford being on our own as our own country. We don't have anything to worry about at all. Albertans continue to contribute disproportionately to Canadian federalism. Our net contribution between 2007 and 2022 was $244.6 billion. So that's all the tax money we sent, and then they only gave us a little bit back and kept $244.6 billion. And we're the selfish ones. We're the traitors. This is not making any sense. CPP, lots of questions about CPP. That red stripe there that you see, the bar that goes all the way down, that's how much extra we pay in that we did not get back between 1981 and 2022. That's how much went to all other Canadians that we supplemented, we subsidized. We continue to subsidize the rest of Canada in every single way. If we had our own pension, and we don't have to be our own country to do this, it's better, but we don't have to be. If we had our own pension, our savings would be astronomical, as you can see. And all that money would stay here. And we wouldn't have to worry about Ottawa turning our pension into an asset and doing who knows what with it. So speaking of taxes and all the taxes that we pay, to Ottawa. Even Carney had to admit that Trudeau blew $200 billion on a failed climate strategy. 200 billion with a B. Where did that money go? Because it went somewhere. So where did it go? Because it's not in our pockets anymore. It's not in our bank accounts anymore. It's in somebody's. But we don't know where and we don't know who. Remember that failed ArriveCan app? Our tax dollars paid for that too. Two dudes in a basement made off like bandits after not accomplishing anything. Trudeau government wastes $10.7 billion just in 1 year on other programs that didn't work. Again, I'm asking, where did those billions of dollars go? Because they went somewhere. They didn't just vanish into thin air. And there's no accountability. There's no getting that money back. There's no explanation. And it hasn't stopped. Just because Carney's in, it hasn't stopped. And this is our money. Meanwhile, nearly half of Canadians report that rising prices are greatly impacting their ability to meet day-to-day expenses. Well, I wonder why. We don't have any money left after the government has wasted it like that. This is our national debt clock. If you go to Canadian Taxpayers Federation, this is rolling like up to the minute amount. So it's going to be much higher than this, especially with Carney spending like he has been. But it's over $1.3 trillion. That is the federal debt. $1.3 trillion. This is our government taking on the debt so you don't have to. But meanwhile, you can't afford groceries. And to put this into perspective, the amount of money spent just on the interest, just to fund the interest on that debt, is more than what's spent on healthcare across the entire country. Think about that. We've got people waiting years to have surgery or some other procedure done. But meanwhile, because billions and billions and billions of dollars went out the door to who knows where, to put us in debt, to raise your taxes, to have this debt at such a level that the interest alone costs more than healthcare across the country. And this is okay? These are the sacrifices that we're supposed to make? While more and more people are lining up for food because they can't afford groceries. This is the country that we live in right now. This is the state of Canada. Is it a cost of living crisis or is it an affordability crisis? I did some homework. This little loaf of bread, plain and simple, plain loaf of bread, 10 years ago was $3.50 here in Alberta. Today, it's $4. That is a 15% increase in just 10 years when nothing about that loaf of bread changed. The flour is the same, the yeast is the same, the milk in there is the same, the salt is the same, all of it is the same. Probably even the same oven that made it. So what changed? What changed is how much your dollar is worth and the number of taxes that are hidden in that loaf of bread. It's not an affordability crisis. It's a cost of living crisis that our federal government created, which has now brought us to the dubious honor of being the food inflation capital of the G7. Let that sink in. The food inflation capital of the G7. But elbows up. Let's look at some more headlines because it isn't all about money. Let's see what else is going on around here. Niagara police warn public of 700% increase in human trafficking. 700% increase. Staggering. Staggering that this is happening in our country. Men, women, and children being completely taken advantage of. And a 700% increase, that tells me that there's not very much going on to prevent it. Well, of course there isn't. Yet, the number of non-Canadian federal inmates continues to rise. Non-Canadian. These folks came in to our country, took advantage of our hospitality, took advantage of our generosity, and then did something so egregious that they landed themselves in a federal prison. Not a provincial one, a federal prison. They come in here, they break our laws, and we're expected to feed them and house them still? That's insane. Absolutely insane. Canada can no longer ignore its violent jihadist extremist problem. This came out on New Year's Day of this year. These are all facts. These are all news headlines of what is going on in this country. Now, admittedly, this is predominantly in the East. There's still bad things that happen here in Alberta. We'd be fools to say that it doesn't, not nearly in the numbers, but this is predominantly in the East. The same provinces that vote continue to vote all of this same government in, these same liberal governments in. And as I said, even if we had a conservative government, they wouldn't be able to change any of this because the Senate is stacked with liberals now. More than half of Canadians no longer feel safe in their neighborhoods. This was in September. Sorry, this one was in September. Well, make no wonder after the headlines I just showed you. But then guess what? This month, January of 2026, is down to 17%. In 4 months. Goes from half, barely half, to 17%. And then we've got this. If you have little kids, cover their ears or just turn this down and read it. MP outraged after man who raped an Ontario girl given time to consider how guilty plea would affect immigration status. Are you fucking kidding me? This guy, his immigration status has more standing than the fact that he completely destroyed a little girl's life. Supreme Court strikes down mandatory minimum sentences for child porn. We live in a country that refuses to protect our children. It's over. It's over. This is not a serious country anymore. And there's no reason that anybody should want to be a part of it. I took this picture. I found it along with hundreds of others. It was posters splattered all over campus at the U of A last fall. Join the communists. Marxist.ca/join. Apparently, we're going to do it better this time. Kill hundreds of millions more? I don't know. But mom and dad, when your kids come home from school, you might want to have a chat. This is usually when people tell me that I'm being a little bit too crazy, and we can fix it. Surely the people in the East, they just don't see what's going on. They don't understand. All right, well, if we're going to fix it, we've got to open up the Constitution, rewrite a lot of this so that we do have fair representation, so that we can make it so that our senators have to be elected, probably our judges too. To do that, we need 7 premiers to agree that make up 50% of the population. So, what 7 premiers are we going to get? We're not. We're not going to. That's why we can't fix it. Because actually, the system isn't broken. It's working exactly like it's designed. Which means our list of reasons for staying gets smaller and smaller every single day. But our list of reasons to leave gets bigger and bigger and bigger every day. We already know that Canada is a sinking ship. That is no surprise. We also know that Alberta has always been filled with trailblazers. That's who we are. It's how it's in our blood, it's in our bones to look after ourselves, to blaze new paths, to do what we need to do for ourselves and for our neighbors and for our communities. We don't have to go down with the ship. We have options. Gandhi said, "The future depends on what you do today." I hear a lot as I'm traveling around, "Oh, the shoulda, coulda, wouldas." Well, it didn't happen then. So, my fellow Albertans, we have some decisions to make now. We have some decisions to make now. And I apologize for the F-bomb in the middle of that. I didn't mean for that to happen. Other than that, I invite you to share this with whoever you think needs to hear it, so that they've got all the relevant information for the decisions that we have to make, because it is important that we make sure we have all the information. We don't want anybody to just presume that they know what's going on around here. And if I'm wrong about anything, let me know. But I'm not. See you guys out there soon.